great to meet you. Thank you for taking a minute out today. I appreciate it. So let's begin our journey into your world by asking you this. 5 years ago, this pandemic was changing our lives, changing everything. How did you get through that era, and how has it influenced the way that you do things now in 2025?
So this is going to sound a little self-serving. The truth was, for me, it wasn't as much of an adjustment as it was for a lot of other people. So I'll give you a little background, right? Super high level. I've done two startups. I've been investing in startups for almost 20 years at this point. And when the pandemic hit, I'd been running accelerator programs for a VC fund called Dream Adventures. So Dream was the third oldest accelerator out there, one of the top five at that point in time. And we had just changed from the sit your butt down in a chair for 3 months straight, speakers, pizza, demo day, raise your round, maybe seed round, to a later stage model. So for us, that meant startups that had some revenue, right, 100,000 to $1 million in revenue, were focused on a particular industry, and they're going to raise a Series A. So they weren't going to raise 500,000, $1 million. They were going to raise like $5 million. Now, when we rebuilt that entire program and went vertically focused in 2017, we realized that those kind of founders aren't going to sit their butts in a chair for 3 months, right? And we're not going to deal with the entire like three or four founders. Now it could be a 10, 20 person team. So we had already designed the program to be about 70% remote to begin with. And the remainder of the program were face-to-face meetings with customers and investors who could lead their A round. So for us, when the pandemic hit, it was just like, okay, we're going to do more of the same. So we had the infrastructure in place. And in fact, uh, I don't know, you're not from there, but we were doing programs with somebody in Tampa. And we were going to do our kickoff in Tampa the week a huge hurricane hit all of Florida. And in a week, we were able to switch from like in person to virtual. So we'd already had a dry run. Okay,
Yeah,
hurricane dry run, maybe not the best choice of words, but we'd already had a dry run going full virtual even before COVID hit.
yeah. So you were almost ready for it.
We were. I mean, it
Yeah.
wasn't by any foresight on our part. It was just because that was the model that we had consciously moved to in 2017, 2018. So when COVID hit, it was like, great, we kind of know how to do this.
Yeah. So if we wanted to get to the marrow of what you do on a daily basis, kids always get the truth out of us. I'm going to put you in front of a bunch of 12-year-olds at a school. It's career day, and one of the kids is like, "Hey, what do you do for a living?" How do you answer?
Okay. Um, I got six things I do, but I'm only going to tell you the ones that like are vaguely cool and interesting to you.
Yeah.
So all the like cool apps on your phone and all the stuff that aren't cool that your parents use, they all started at some point. They're startups. I find those companies and I invest in them.
So what did you want to be at 12 years old? What was your dream job?
I had two dream jobs. One was to be a jockey. So one of my soul crushing moments as a kid was realizing I was actually too big to be a jockey.
Wow.
I'm not a big guy. I'm like I'm 5'8", but that's already too big to be a jockey.
Yeah.
The other one was to be an astronaut. That one never seemed to happen. So,
Yeah.
I'm already on my third or fourth choice now.
There you go. Well, I remember when I did career day, they said that you might have between 7 to 10 career changes, which I thought was insane at the time. But it makes
Oh,
sense. I mean, there's a lot of people out there that just it takes a while for them to find their
yeah.
place.
I would have thought back then it would have been like, it seems like we're roughly peers.
Yeah.
Like back then, the idea that you might work for one company your entire life was still possible,
Yeah.
right? Or at least within the same industry. Uh, I've had I think, five career changes over the course of my career, and that was a little bit crazy, I
Yeah.
thought. Whoever told you that as a kid was kind of, ahead of the curve.
Yeah, they were, yeah. And it seemed crazy to me too, from my parents and my grandparents, it just didn't add up. So let me ask you this. What were the foundational elements early on in your life that made you an entrepreneur, that gave you this vision? How did all of this come to being the seeds that were sown?
Um, I don't have the same answer that the founders that I invest in have. So it's kind of weird. So both my grandfathers were small business entrepreneurs, as opposed to like tech entrepreneurs, which kind of didn't really exist back then.
Yeah.
My mom's dad come back from World War II, and he'd done everything from manufacturing Zippo lighters to insurance products. And he was very successful at that. Unfortunately, he died when I was 12. So like I kind of Just I knew I wanted to do that. My dad was an OBGYN, he was a doctor. Everyone who came from somewhere else was a business person, hustled. They wanted their kids to be professionals because that was a more secure and less, stressful life. And then everyone whose fathers were that was like, that's boring. I don't want to do that. I don't want to be a doctor or a lawyer or an accountant.
Yeah.
So in a way, I was like reverting back to the generation, skipping the let's be a stable profession goal. But my grandfather had passed when I was 12, so I had him as a role model, but not as a mentor. And my other grandfather passed when I was, I think, 18, and he had opened up. His thing was he would open up like candy shops, convenient toy shops, candy shops in like iffy neighborhoods, build them up. Neighborhoods got better, and they would sell them, and he would do it again.
Wow.
But again, like I was, I think in late high school, early college when he passed. So I didn't really have him as a mentor either. So a lot of my early career was kind of figuring out how to get where I ultimately got.
So on that journey to get where you are now, who was that hero, that inspirational force consistently that you looked up to?
So that's the crazy part. Like I never had that hero, right? And I'll be brutally honest. Early in my career, I didn't use mentors appropriately. So I came out of business school, and back then, entrepreneurship was like, oh, you're unemployed, right? So when I came out of Chicago Booth, door on the right's for investment banking, door on the left is for consulting. If you want to go into marketing, you went to the wrong school, and that was kind of it.
Yeah.
So I knew I didn't want to be an iBanker. So I'm like, let's do consulting. I'll get to know a lot of different industries. Maybe I'll fall in love with them, and that's what I'll do. Like the idea that I could be doing a startup didn't even occur to me. It wasn't a thing. The closest we had to it was a new business lab where we created products for large companies. In my case, American Airlines, which I thought was pretty cool. Anyway, 4 years of consulting. I'm like, yeah, this is all kind of interesting for 6 months to a year, but not like I want to do the next 30 years of my life. And then I was on a project in London where we were building this insurance product for two companies that were merging, and we could get pro forma financials right away without contaminating the different groups of people on either company who would then not be able to go back to their jobs if the merger didn't go through. And I remember thinking to myself, that's it. That's what I want to do. It didn't exist 4 years ago when I graduated from business school, but now it does. I got to get me into that.
So let me ask you this. At the end of the day, if you could meet one entrepreneur out there that has consistently done good work, someone that you might emulate a little bit and spend some time
Mm.
with them, who would you love to meet and talk to?
This is going to be super controversial because he's well, I'll just say it's super controversial. It would be Elon Musk.
Yeah.
He's just done so many things in so many varied industries, and by and large, done them uh, well to incredibly well. That I think would be an interesting conversation. Plus, in some cases, he's kind of a little whacked off his gourd, so that would be a fun conversation that way too.
Yeah.
And I will say that say what you want about everything else in his life. If you had to point to one person on the planet who did more to advancing decarbonization, it ain't Greta, it's him. Right?
Yeah.
He single-handedly made the EV market happen maybe a decade earlier than it would have.
Yeah.
So, and the battery storage, which is important to alternate generation. So, yeah, I got to go with Elon.
So what gets you up every day? What motivates you to not only do your job well, but to take care of your soul, your family, your life? What is that collective energy for you?
So I invest in startups, right? I told you I did two startups. Now I've invested in like 70 plus startups, and I've mentored hundreds, if not, 1,000 plus. Like I love doing that. Like going out there and meeting an entrepreneur, like, oh my God, I never thought about that, but that's brilliant.
Yeah.
Or finding that kind of diamond in a rough. Like I'm like, hey, Joe, that's awesome, but you're making like 17 different mistakes. However, all of those are pretty easily fixable. And then finding someone who's got that right mindset, who's like, awesome, let's talk about it.
Yeah.
Like that jazzes me.
Talk to me about the book, The Entrepreneur's Odyssey. What made you write this book? What was kind of the urge to do it?
Okay, a couple different pieces to it came together at once. So, thread number one, as I'm running this accelerator, there's a lot of dealing with startups that are diamonds in the rough. So I'm giving them a lot of advice. You should try this, you should try that. And what I'd started to notice was whenever I could say, listen, there's this other startup I've worked with before. Here's what they were facing. Here's what they did. Those stories had a much higher impact, higher likelihood of being adopted as advice than it was just like, hey, I think you should do A, B, and C. So like the power of the story as opposed to just how-to guide style hit me. Now, at the same time, I just listen, I'm doing a lot of it. I can help people one-on-one. It'd be awesome to get a little bit broader and do something that everyone could do. Maybe I write a book. But I hadn't quite put those two ideas together, power of the story and writing a book. And I didn't want to write a book that, oh, everyone else has kind of written how-to guides and they're kind of deathly boring business, like bland anecdote, 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 name drop, name drop, name drop, pad a 20-page PowerPoint into a 200-page book. I want to do that.
Yeah.
But then I remembered the only textbook I can remember from business school. You ever hear of a book called The Goal?
Yeah.
Yeah, so The Goal was a novel about a guy that had to turn around a printing plant. And it was our textbook in our strategy and operations class. And if you're dealing with people who went to business school at a certain time, they still remember, what's the Herbie? Remember the Herbie?
Yeah. Yeah.
Everyone knows. Okay, that's the bottleneck. Why? Because that was the kid on the Boy Scout hike that was slowing everybody down until the hero of the book could figure out what was going on and remove the bottleneck,
Yeah.
which, by the way, he didn't do by killing Herbie. You remember.
Right. Yeah.
So I'm like, oh, wait, I can actually write a story about a fictional startup from soup to nuts, from just after the idea to closing the funding round. I could embed all the advice I give in that story, and that would be a more memorable and a far more interesting way
Yeah.
to um, to get this across. I'm like, that's awesome. And then, of course, I did nothing because I was super busy.
Yeah.
And then the pandemic came around. I started doing 6 or 7 different things. I'm like, if I don't write it now, I'll never write it by complete and total chance. I'm going out there trying to meet agents and publishers. I get introduced to a publisher. They're like, "We love business fables." My response is, "Oh, I didn't know that's what it was called." And I dig a little deeper. They published The Goal. So it
Wow.
all came full circle.
That's so cool, man.
I just got lucky on that one.
Yeah, for sure. So you're getting wonderful reviews on Amazon, a lot of 5-star ratings. Have you gotten a letter? Have you gotten a fan response from somebody that's been
Yeah.
read it?
So I haven't gotten the total random fan that I've never met before.
Yeah.
There are a lot of people who were entrepreneurs I've talked with, other investors I've talked to. Because actually, when you flip the book like sideways, figuratively speaking,
Yeah.
it's actually a great guide to new angel investors on what to look for in a startup. So like either the startups, people who are doing startups, people who have done startups and read it, partly because they were curious, and there's everyone else that had some kind of connection to me. I've gotten a lot of feedback from them. I guess I've gotten a couple of interesting feedbacks from people I didn't meet before, mostly podcasters like you, who had come across me on like Podmatch or some other services, and they looked at the book and like, oh my God, I looked at the book, it's really awesome.
Yeah.
Can we have you on the show? But I haven't gotten like the pure fan who
Yeah.
was just like, hey, you don't know me from Adam or Jane, but I just read the book. It was awesome. Thank you. I haven't gotten that yet.
It's going to happen. So let me ask you this. If you had a dream tonight, ran into the 18-year-old version of you, ready to go out into the world and change it, you could give that version a piece of advice based on this life you've lived, choices you've made, wisdom you've gained. What advice would you impart?
Never play leapfrog with a unicorn. Okay, no, I'm sorry. I just like there's like 5 or 6 things, so that's the only
Yes,
one that jumped to mind.
I love it.
The other one is a Smith and Wesson beats 4 aces every day. Okay, startup advice.
Yeah,
Um, number one, why now? Right? It's easy to fall in love with an idea and a problem. The hard part, the people don't like to think about are the stuff that I think about intuitively as an investor. So if what you're doing right now could have been done 4 or 5 years ago, I guarantee one of two things are true. Either there are thousands of startups, oh, I'm sorry, dozens of startups further ahead of you, like they've tried it, they're further ahead, you're too late to the party, or lots of them have tried it and failed because, it seemed like a good idea, but they tried it and it didn't really work. It's very, very rare that something could have been done 4 or 5 years ago and no one's done it and you can do it. I would say I can think of one example, oh, 2 examples in my 20 years where that's actually been true. One's very famous, one you've never heard of. So number one is make sure you understand why now. And along with that is, going out there and getting in front of the customers from the beginning, before you code anything, before you've got anything other than a fairly well-defined uh, thesis as to what your solution is going to be. Get out there, talk to dozens of them, and make sure you're really solving a problem that is painful, intense, widespread, not just you, and frequent, not just like once in a lifetime type stuff. If you're out there and you're doing that and they don't have a good solution for it yet, and you put down like, hey, here's what I'm thinking about building, or maybe even what I call the index card app that's actually in the book. If you can get that in front of them and get that feedback early on, you will save yourself a ton of pain and suffering, a
Yeah.
ton of blind paths. So make sure you have a why now and get in front of the customers as soon as you can, way earlier than you would otherwise think to do.
So having the heart of a true entrepreneur and making investments and going down that risk route in your life, what's the first big purchase that you made that was a little scary, but it ended up working out?
My personal life, it has to be the first time I bought a home.
Yeah.
But I don't think that's what you're asking. I think you're asking more on the on the startup side. Uh, I'll tell you what I didn't do, and in retrospect, I regret. And it was scary. We didn't do it, and we thought we knew better. So my first startup, we'd gotten to the point where we were doing a couple $1 million in revenue, and one of our competitors was kind of on the market. And we looked at it and we went down the path. We went through all their, their book of business, and we're thinking, well, if we pay X and we convert this many of their customers, and sort of could make sense. However, on the other hand, if they're just going to sell to somebody else, because there aren't that many people in our sector, we can just pick off a bunch of their customers and we'll get fewer of them, but we'll just pick them off for free. That's a better deal for us. So we declined to go through with the purchase. In retrospect, it was a mistake. And the reason was you have to get to a certain size before certain types of acquirers care about you. So to put it in context, say a corporate M&A department, it takes the same amount of time for them to dig into and diligence a startup that's doing $3 million in revenue as it does for one that's doing $13 million in revenue. Now, if both startups can give the same percentage boost to the company, just the raw numbers, the raw impact a $3 million startup can do is so much smaller than a 13 million, even though percentage wise it's the same benefit. So they just won't engage with companies that are below a certain revenue target, $5 or $10 million, depending on where you're looking at. So what we totally overlooked was there was a certain value to being over that revenue hurdle that would have put us into a different bucket of potential acquirers. So when we wanted to exit, we could have gotten a higher number. So even though just based on, steal the customers versus buy the customers, steal seemed to make sense. Um, it was worth, single quotes, overpaying to buy the customers to get the higher multiples on the exit later.
Yeah.
So we were kind of too scared to pull the trigger on the buy because it seemed like we were overpaying.
Sure.
We should have gone the other way.
Yeah. What is it Steve Jobs said? Everything is 2020 in retrospect.
Oh yeah, hindsight's 2020.
Hindsight's 2020. That's it. So let me ask you this. If you were to walk into a room of everybody that knows you in a business sense, and you could go to a podium and tell them one fun story about you, like a magical trip you've been on, jumping out of an airplane, just something that's fun that would humanize you to that room of business people. What would be a good story you would tell them?
So ironically, it is jumping out of an airplane, but jumping out of an airplane with my 70 plus year old father-in-law.
Wow.
So he might have been in the late 60s at the time. So uh, my wife's sister was getting married, and we were up there from Toronto. We were up in Toronto for like the extended weekend. There was like nothing for her dad or me to do that was productive on Friday morning. So we said, let's go skydiving. So he'd been skydiving ages ago. I'd never gone, or I'd done like the stupid stuff at like amusement parks where you can hover over a fan.
Yeah.
So that's great. And if we're going to do it and we had time, we weren't just going to do a tandem jump where you jump out and you're a passenger. We were going to take the lessons.
Yeah.
Right? So like hours of lessons. You know what the lessons boiled down to? It was like you jump out, pull the cord, look up, oh, chute's tangled, get rid of the first chute, deploy the second chute. Just
Yeah.
learning that muscle memory.
Yeah.
And that and how to jump out of the plane. That was like hours of instruction. Anyway, so we go up there and until you actually get up, jumping out of a plane, until you actually doing that, you don't know like, is it going to be scary? Are you going to freeze or what have you? So we take off in this plane The doors open from the beginning. It's a small plane. There's no seats in back. There's like 8 people, kind of all sitting there on the hard sheet metal floor. And depending on what altitude they want to jump at, different people are being called forward. So we get to our level, and they call us. So my father-in-law kind of butt cheek walks himself over to the edge, turns around, goes like this, and jumps out. And then they're looking at me, and I'm like, the easiest thing I ever did was jump after that. Because like there's no way after a 70-year-old guy just jumped out of the plane without a bit of hesitation, I was going to hesitate.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
boom, jumped out, easiest thing ever.
That's
I
awesome.
don't know how I would have felt if I was called to go first.
So let me ask you this. If everything that you've done and accomplished, and more importantly, evolved to at this point in your life, what are you the proudest of?
I mean, truthfully and also kind of maudlin, I got 3 teenage girls and they haven't killed me yet. I got one of them in college. She seems to be doing okay, knock wood. I feel like, okay, I've accomplished something there. Everything else, like ask me again in a couple of years. We'll see how the startups exit.
Yeah.
But kind of less cheesy and more professionally, when I left Dream It after COVID, and there's kind of a longer story behind that, they ended up getting out of the sectors I was investing in. So I ended up I had the opportunity to continue to invest in those startups. And I created different SPVs, a special purpose vehicle, so I could invest in them with some of my friends. And so far, 6 out of the 7 are doing really, really well. And the seventh one may still turn it around.
Yeah.
So I'm proud that the startups that I chose early on are doing so well. And I was able to get people who are my peers to trust me enough to put money into their up rounds. And thank God they're doing well.
That's wonderful. So at the end of the day, Andrew, everyone has a perception of you, family, friends, clients, everyone that works with you, but you run the show. What's your perception of you? Who do you think you are?
Um, a work in progress. All right, so you're catching me like 10 days after the Jewish New Year and a day after Yom Kippur. Spent a lot of time in services, not all of which is totally interesting. So there's a lot of time for reflection. And, every time I do this, I look back at who I was 5 years ago and I'm like, man, 5-year-old me kind of thought he had it worked out. But now, like in retrospect, kind of clueless about a lot of things. And that used to depress me. And then I realized, but what's the alternative? To look back and say, like, oh, he had it pretty much together. That means I learned anything in 5 years. So as long as I feel like every couple of years I'm looking back and like that guy was clueless, it means I've learned a lot.
Yeah.
So I always consider myself a work in progress, an experiment. I'm testing things. I'm always changing. That's who I am.
The Entrepreneur's Odyssey is the new book. If anybody wants to get that, they want to reach out, learn more about what you're doing. How do they do that?
Uh, 2 or 3 ways. Simple. If you want to learn a little bit more about me, and there's a link to the book there. I have a personal website. It's Andrew B as in boy Ackerman. He's my middle initial. So andrewbackerman.com. Or they could say, F that. I don't care about you, but the book's kind of interesting. Just go straight to Amazon. You can order it there.
Okay, excellent. I will put links in the show notes. Andrew, what a great story, man. Thank you. Thank you for your time. Best of luck.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Best to you.
Yeah, thank you.